Is this okay now? Does this work? Sound all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for verifying that.
I heard that.
Okay, great. That's all that matters. So hello, Rafram.
Hi.
And this is really this whole meeting and this whole interview is really about understanding basically what it took for a human being to actually an artist to suddenly go to a place where you were researching, you were doing photographing, trying to understand something about the Libyan world and community, the Jewish world, and suddenly to be snatched out of that and abruptly be imprisoned and for an unknown period of time. And I believe in this time period, you thought it was final. This was going to be your final destination.
Yeah.
So I think that before we get into that, I want them to understand who you are, like as a person, like in other words, how you grew up. You were born, I believe you came to Israel from Tunisia when you were a baby.
Yeah. Right. I mean, we all came as a family. I mean, my grandfather was the head of the community in Djerba, and he published many books about the history of Djerba and everything. He also been to Tripoli many times because Tripoli is the big city close to Djerba. Djerba still is in Tunisia, but it's an island in the south. So Tripoli even wrote a book about the rabbis of Djerba and Tripoli.
Right. So by Tripoli, you mean Libya, right? For people who don't.
Yes, okay. It's in Libya, and it's the biggest. It's the biggest city in Libya. It's the capital. And we grew up in this kind of like Tunisian language. Still, like my uncle was chief rabbi of Tunisia until 2004. He used to come to visit us. We sent photos to each other, to my family who left in Tunisia. So it was all basically part of. I mean, Tunis was always part of life, basically. And I came back for weddings to Tunis, and when I was living in Italy since 2004, I started to go on a boat trips to Tunis from Genova.
So regularly, despite the fact that you were raised in Israel, spoke Hebrew, learned Hebrew, you had a strong connection your whole life with Tunisia.
Yeah, we have strong life with basically family. Like family, what's family, where family come from. I mean, I know many Tunisians who came to Israel in the 50s lost this kind of connection, but because we left late, because we had the language, so it was a bit different for us. So we were a bit isolated in Israel, but we had this family still. I had my uncles in Tunisia, and it was always part of life, basically.
So in other words, in the background, you spoke the Tunisian dialect.
Yeah.
Was it, would you say, was the regular Tunisian dialect, or was it the Jewish Tunisian dialect?
Jewish, Djerbian, southern dialect, yeah.
Okay.
A bit different. I mean, some letters are different, some words are different.
The reason I'm curious about this is because is it similar to the language that's spoken in Libya as well?
It's quite similar, yes.
Okay.
Not very. Libyans, you can go to almost Egyptian sometimes. I mean, there's always like connection to the borders. But the Jews of Libya speak very similar dialect to the Jews of Djerba, yes.
Because obviously the next question, maybe not obvious, but the next question for me would be, what would take a Tunisian Jew raised in Israel and make you go to Libya, rather than, let's say, Tunisia, to photograph cemeteries and synagogues there?
So basically, I did also documentation of Tunisia, of course, of life with Tunisia, which is easier and it's easy to move around, to navigate. I know more about Tunisia. But Libya as a place was close to everyone, basically. It was, even if you're European and you have a job there, you will need to meet somebody in the airport. He will take you around and will bring you to the airport. It was very, very close country. In the same time, the Jewish past is fascinating there. And the Jewish communities of Libya, who actually mostly in Israel and Rome, heard that Gaddafi is about to destroy the synagogues that left, the cemeteries, to flood them. And they really wanted to have some documentation. So they came up to me as a Tunisian. Since I have a Tunisian passport, I can go to Libya without visa, basically. And asked me if I would take this job of basically documenting, maybe last documentation. The last Jewish Libyan who died, she died in 1982, but she was very old. I mean, there's no documentation from her side. So the last documentation, we talk about the end of 60s.
For the Jews in Libya?
Yes, the Jews of Libya. It's also oral documentation, not like photography. So the idea was to take a full documentary trip with videos and stills of entire Libya. to Benghazi, even Darna, like almost the city in the Egyptian border. And they asked me that, and then I was calling my Tunisian friend, what do you think about this? They told me it's a bit a crazy adventure. It can be dangerous. So I was starting to reach out to friends of people who know Gaddafi's son and asking questions and trying to read in the internet, but there was nothing in the internet about visiting Libya. And then I decided to do it while doing it very openly, not hiding and stuff, because I understood it's a very small country. When I landed in Tripoli from Tunis, I said everything in the airport, like I'm Tunisian Jew. I didn't say I grew up in Israel. I said Tunisian Jew. I came with my Tunisian passport, and I'm here to document Jewish sites. And I rented a driver, rented a hotel room. This is the details, and it was okay.
Everything was fully transparent.
Yes, yes. I knew there's nothing to hide. Basically. I mean, if they would know everything anyway.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to back up 1 second. It might become relevant later. How is it that you have Jewish Tunisian friends that were friends with Gaddafi's son?
It's actually a family member of mine that is connected to Gaddafi's son. Yes.
Okay.
Parties, Paris, all kinds of. I mean, Gaddafi's son were basically like celebrating all the time, and I have friends who know. I mean, yeah.
Okay, so you arrived. This is what month? 2010, right?
Yeah, that's February.
February 2010.
2010, yes.
And
before the civil war.
So you begin your work. You're photographing cemeteries and synagogues.
I started the great synagogue of Tripoli in the old town, in the Medina Kadima, the old town. I found it after a day and a half. It was a bit so. I met in one of the coffee shops there a Tunisian guy who recognized me as Tunisian very fast.
From your look?
From my look, from my hair, from everything. He told me, "What are you doing here?" And I said, he recognized I'm Jewish, actually. He told me, "Don't ask anything about Jewish sites because people are afraid that Jews are coming to take over their properties." You know, like, okay. And so it was very, very hard to start to find things in the old town, which is very, very crowded. But I did find the Grand Synagogue of Tripoli. Which is like almost 2-3 floors high, and it's a big hall, and there's a 10 Commandments outside, and it was still there, half destroyed, but still there. I did a prayer there. I prayed Arvit, like Shabbat of Friday night. I don't pray usually, but I prayed there, and Sunday I came back to take photo, basically to start document. And then I started to go. The cemetery was completely destroyed, from the 80s. The cemetery of Tripoli. Then I went to the Jabal area, the one with the Amazigh, where the Amazigh and the Jews used to live, the Berber people, like around 2-3 hours south of Tripoli with my driver. And then I found more stuff. I found very old synagogues, Marmal, like where they used to study, where they used to work, the olive grove, everything basically that belonged to Jews. I documented everything. I did another trip there a day after, and also I went to Homs, which is the city that actually they were doing construction there to build a whole villa neighborhood on the beach, on the cemetery, basically. So half the cemetery was still there. So another half was completely destroyed. So I was basically in the middle of, I was documenting that, like in the middle of the destruction of the cemetery. So I basically cleaned lots of graves and took a photo of each one, and it took me like around 5-6 hours. I had a bottle of water and was cleaning. It was basically just to show it to people, basically, that the families of the people. Then I came back. I took a flight from Tripoli to Benghazi, which is the other side of Libya. Benghazi, again, the synagogue became a Coptic church, so also the Coptic were very suspicious. They didn't let me in. So I took photos from outside. I went to Darna, which is almost Egypt. And in Darna, also, I managed to go into a cemetery, climbing the wall, and still cleaning everything, taking photos. And Darna was interrogated for half an hour by the secret police, but then released. I took a flight back to Tripoli, and basically that was all together like 10 days, basically going around Libya and taking photos with many cameras, with film, with digital, with video, and I had the whole thing basically with me.
And in this period of time, where secret police came once in a while, people would come and talk with you, ask you what you're doing.
Yeah, in Darna was really the interrogation. They took my phone, they took everything, they asked me, and I was very open again about what I do and giving them coordinates where I was. They said, we know that. Everything was transparent. And yeah, until then, basically.
Okay, so in other words, but you don't feel that that you said there was fear among the people that somehow you're documenting. You're preparing the place for a new Jewish invasion or something. Was that the fear?
Yeah, my fear. I mean, people that I was talking to, like the drivers and everyone,
right.
They're talking to me about the secret police in Libya that are brutal. They know everyone what he's doing after work. If you have some affair, they know about that. They use it. They're very powerful, basically. But at the same time, I was quite confident because I was very transparent in what I do. I didn't take photos of soldiers, of women. That it's written. I mean, I was very, very careful about everything. And I knew that we can get to Gaddafi's son if we have some problem. Can make a phone call.
So you had the security.
And I don't kill anyone. I mean, I don't do anything bad, really. So I was okay. I was quite. I mean, I was happy to leave.
Correct. Happy to leave. Yeah.
Happy to leave. Yes, I was not. I didn't want to stay after 10 days.
Okay, so let's take us to the next step. And then what happened?
So basically, after I packed my suitcase and I was supposed to take a taxi to the airport to fly to Tunis.
This is in March now.
That's still February.
Still February. Okay.
I think so. It was Saturday noon, and then people knock on the door and ask me to bring them their passports and that they need to check something. And it takes like an hour or two, and I wait in the lobby with this, and I wait because I need a passport to fly, of course. And then they come back after a few hours, and they asked me to come to the car, and I told them, would you bring me my passport? They said yes. And then we started to drive, and at some point, one of the guys told me, remove your head, don't look where you're going. And I was removing my head, I didn't know what was happening. Probably, I thought maybe we go to police station, I don't know. And in a second, I was lifting my head. He hit me in the head.
You had to put your head down, in other words?
Yes, I had to put, and then of course I removed my head. We arrived to some facility. They told me to remove my clothes, everything, and to go to a room, basically, to stay in a room. And that's how I arrived to a place called, I learned later, called Djerba. It's like basically interrogation center of the secret police. Which is in Tripoli. It's one of the suburbs of Tripoli. And in this space, I stayed 20 days, basically, in this place, the Djerba. For the first time, I was 3 days without anything. Nobody told me anything about where I am, who I am. I couldn't make a phone call to Gaddafi that I thought I'm going to make a phone call to family.
Right.
There were no phone calls. There was nothing. And after a few days, interrogation started, basically.
And in this time period, were you given your regular rights? Like, you were fed well, you had a place to sleep. Like, was there any kind of torture during this point?
There was no torture. There was just food coming. There was a mattress. There was a toilet.
Okay.
It's basically a hole in the floor. Very dirty, everything. And I was like in a kind of a room with there were 5 cells next to each other.
This is already a prison.
It looked like a custody.
Okay.
Basically. It doesn't look like a prison. I don't know how prison look like, but I'm not an expert. But it was like, I felt like it's something like temporary. But I was thinking that once I will talk to somebody, I will be able to make a phone call at least, so I can arrange things and ask, first of all, what I did. I mean, what happened and why I'm in prison. So
at this point, you still have hope. You still think that this is going to be solved.
I had hope all the time, basically.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So then the next stage, what happened after this?
So basically, also in these days, I had a neighbor, which was a British person.
A neighbor meaning the next cell over?
I think 3 or 4 cells. I have no idea, but he was crying all the time because they were beating him all the time. They were torturing him, and I tried to encourage him. And he told me that he's going to be deported, and I was very happy about that. That people actually being out of this facility,
right?
And but in any case, I told him to write my sister that I'm okay, that I'm going to be out soon. Write her an email. And that's actually one of the phases that actually made my family know I'm there. The email, basically. I was sure he's part of the police because it sounds very suspicious. I think a British guy was tortured. I mean, it was deported. Everything sounds very like somebody who's like. But he did send an email, and after 3 days, actually, when I was started to be interrogated by 2 interrogators, one tall, one short, and start to ask me questions about who I am and what I do, and nothing about Libya. They didn't care about Libya. They care about only my life before. And that's the point when I started to lie. Because I couldn't tell them I grew up in Israel. So I changed Jerusalem with London, basically, which I lived there for a period.
Right.
So I just changed everything, every detail about my family, everyone, and moved it to London. But grew up, but was born in Tunisia, and everything is the same, basically. That's for like a few days, like 3-4 days, basically. And everything is written, protocols on protocols. Every time the questions repeating the same questions, until the point when they ask my email and my Facebook passwords. That's very nice. I mean, you just need to give them. And then after a few days, I mean, they call me again for interrogation, and then I understand they know I'm from Israel because they saw some. They were just basically checking my emails back for many years back.
Right.
And I understood that I visited Israel because and they start to tell me that I'm lying and that I'm also Israeli and stuff like that. And then I understood that I'm not in a very good situation. And I decided to tell them everything, I tell them, okay, everything I told you, just change Jerusalem. And I live now in Italy, I do this, I do that. And I'm trying always to soften it up a bit because Israel is like a red flag, of course. And in the same time, they're starting to torture me, basically. They start to say I am a liar, they don't believe in anything I say, and they start to beat me, basically. It's part of the routine. It looked like part of the routine there. Like they put a towel on my head, they close it, and they tie my legs, and they start to beat my feet. They break my feet a few times. They use electricity, they use all kind. Every day it's different, basically. And always I need to repeat everything. Also when I'm tied, when they put water on the electricity, everything, like all this stuff. Repeating this version, which is actually the last one. And I cannot have other versions. And always repeating about tell us something new. Tell us something new. We wait for something new. It was a few days like that. And then in the end, they told us, okay, we're going to release you tomorrow. We are sorry for the pain. We are sorry for that. But now we understand that you're saying the truth. Tomorrow, and the shop guy told me, I get you the best coffee in Tripoli. We're going to have a coffee, and then I send you in a car to Djerba on a service taxi.
And you believed they were, until this day, you believe they were sincere, that they really thought you were going to be released the next day.
Yes, I was sure I'm going to release. I'm sure I'm going to be released. And also because I was speaking, I mean, it's everything I know. There's nothing else. I mean, I can tell them. And then the day passed, the day after, and then there was another interrogator come and things starting to be, and the other one were not there, and it's starting to be much worse. Everything started to scream on me that I'm hiding.
Was it one new interrogator or two?
A new one. I didn't see him because I had a towel in my head.
Oh, okay.
A very, very strong voice, and he told me I'm lying and I'm hiding something very big, and starting beating again, basically. And that's actually starting around another 5-6 days until the end of this period. That I also cannot sleep in the night. They don't let me sleep. So every night I need to go back to the corridor and just stand, basically, be facing the wall, day and night, like that. Lots of humiliation, like go to the parking lot, crawl on your belly and clean the cigarette butt with your mouth under the cars, kicking me all the time. It's like a period when you are almost floating. So, I mean, you're under the head was covered, so it was for me like kind of period that I'm floating.
So the whole time your head was covered?
Yes. It's a blue towel that's full of blood, and I remember the first time they gave me the towel, they told me it's a gift, and I remember I was angry about this idea of a gift, but it was a period of pain, basically, and also mental, but mostly pain. But in a way, pain, it was manageable. In a way, it was horrible, but there were peaks of pain, and there was no other choice. Actually, I didn't have another choice. I couldn't fight them back. Do
you remember what you were thinking at that time?
I remember I was dreaming a lot. I was dreaming a lot. In the beginning, I thought nobody will believe me. I thought about my friends, like, But
So you already thought this is going to be over and you're going to go back and nobody will believe the story.
yeah, I thought it's too weird to be true for me. I was just a week ago in Italy, was eating dinner with some, like everything was so different. And then it's me here, but after a few days, I forgot. I didn't thought about how to tell my friends, but I thought how to not to survive it, but how to manage it by my head. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I have nothing to say. And in the last days when I had to stand all the time, it was the most horrible thing because they were still promising me all kinds of hell. Like they're going to be taking my eyes off. They're going to break my teeth. They're going to rape me. They're going to all kinds of things that coming over and over. And something, I don't know if they say the truth and they're trying to calculate. They said this thing, they were truth, and the other things are not truth, and what happened. And it was like that for, and that's basically finishing like a period of 20 days in this Djerba area, which ends basically in a promise that they're going to take my eyes off the day after midday. But on the same day they promised that, they put me on a car and they drove me to the prison, to Abu Salim prison, basically. And since then, they never came back, interrogators.
And did you believe that this was going to happen to you the next day?
The first 3 days, I was sure that they come to take my eyes out. The first 3 days, because it was also, I think it was a weekend, and they said, okay, they don't work on the weekend. They will come after the weekend to take my eyes off. And I was trying to use the eyes as more as I can, so I can have a good memory of watching. But I was basically in a room without knowing where I am. No toilet at this point, broken feet. There were lots of small bones broken there. Completely, I was sitting on the floor, which was nice after 6-7 days of not sitting, only standing. So that was a good thing. I remember it was all about like trying to understand where I am, and is this place is where you go out after that. After that, you were released or not. I had no idea what's happening because nobody told me.
You thought this was detention and you should be released after?
Yes, probably I would release. I was like, okay, that makes sense. And then after a few days there, they came again. I was sure, okay, the eyes are going now. But they then took me to another room, which was my house for another 5 months.
And this new prison was located where?
It's a neighborhood called Abu Salim.
Abu Salim,
yes. And Abu Salim, I learned after that it's basically a political prison that you don't live unless you die. Basically,
it's a one-way trip.
Yeah. And usually ISIS people were there and tortured and died, and all the enemies of Gaddafi basically were there.
Wow.
Yes.
So this is so in other words, the interrogation finishes, you're told that your eyes are about to be gouged out, and the next thing you know, you're in this new prison, and you learn pretty quickly that nobody ever leaves this prison.
I don't know that people don't.
When did you find this out?
One of the guards once told me that this is like the end place. One of the guards was nice to me. So basically, I had every day like 5-6 guards around, bring me food, that open for me, close for me, and every day they changed, and every 4 days they came back. Basically, there was a group. So I started to know everything. Of course, I knew a lot of. I knew everything because there was nothing to do basically in the room there. But one of them was a black guy from Chad, and he told me he grew up in a Jewish neighborhood in Tripoli. So he liked Jews. He liked the food there.
Right.
And we talked about it. We talked about food. We talked about life in Tripoli. And he was my only friend, basically. He gave me a cigarette once.
And the guards, they were allowed to speak with you?
No, they were not allowed to speak to me.
Okay.
So he did it but he was a big guy. And I heard him screaming on other prisoners, and I was lucky that he liked me. And I made him laugh sometimes. Before he came, I was preparing myself all the time. I was hearing his shoes coming. You hear everything. You know everything, and you hear people scream. You hear people sing. You hear people cry. This is the noise usually of this prison, because people get beaten still there. Some people.
Were you?
No, I was not beaten there. Only once.
So you basically, from what I understand, you were put in this prison, and there's absolutely nothing is allowed, no books.
Yeah.
No pencils, no pens. So your art is taken away from you.
Yeah, art is not only pencil for me, but it's. There was nothing.
Right.
Nothing to express myself. Nothing to get fed by text or something. and nothing, no furniture,
Obviously, no visitors.
no visitors,
Yeah.
no lawyers, nothing. And from this nothingness, I mean, it took me another month and a half. I remember because I was counting stuff all the time to be okay, to be basically to come back to life, basically, so I can actually walk on my feet and be healthy mentally. And it started like after 2 weeks. I mean, the beginning of prison, the first 2 weeks, I was completely destroyed. Mentally, physically, I was destroyed completely. And then I started to stand, to be able to stand.
Like literally physically?
Physically, like
Okay.
on my feet. It was still pain, and then I started to do kind of like trying to get my body and my mind back to life. I don't know why I did it, but I was like, if they're gonna release me in some point, I want to go out from this place completely healthy, physically and mentally. And I can do it only here. I cannot do it outside. If they do it today, if they release me today, I'm going to be fucked because I cannot do it outside. I need to do it here in the place where it's happening. And
I found this remarkable because you mentioned this to me the other day. This was your decision not to be traumatized.
Yes. I mean, I'm not a big expert, but I understood that post-trauma comes after trauma. So I try to have the life itself in prison not as traumatic, but as special, not trauma, not something that basically like it's like my trip in my life. It's part of the trip basically. And I remember a specific day after altogether 2 months basically, that I was awake in the morning and I started to do my rituals. And I felt amazing. I felt like completely, physically, mentally, completely available to go outside and continue with my life like a day before my prison, like continue exactly. And I remember that I said, I'm ready. And if it's happening now or in 5 years or in 10 years, it's okay. But now I'm ready. So I was a bit afraid actually to get out of prison before I'm ready. But I was not afraid to be a few months more or a few years more. I remember that very, very. I remember that the work I did in my head was that I need to be ready. And
can you say one more time? How long did it take you? 1 month before you?
A month and a half.
A month and a half.
A month and a half. Yes.
Can you maybe talk us through the rituals that you developed that allowed you to actually create a sense of who you were, where you were?
Yeah, I mean, when you are in a small room of 2 meters, I don't know how much is in libras, or I don't know how you count here.
Canadian, sorry.
Yes, 4 miles. So, okay, 2 meters room, a small room, basically, that you can stretch your body until the end, and that's it. Without toilet, without nothing to read. So basically kind of a cube that it's yours. I mean, there are a few spiders, there are mosquitoes coming at 7 p.m. around evening, because there's only the light from the window, there's no electricity. And there are 5 times muazzin, this mosque is singing to prayer 5 times a day. On Friday, it's longer one, so you know it's Friday. And there's food coming, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So this is basically the points of your life. This is the new you organize your life not by years, weeks, but you organize it by 8 points that happening every day.
Right.
So there's a breakfast. So there's before breakfast and after breakfast, and there's before muazzin one, after muazzin one. So I had many points, and these points were devoted to many aspects of life, which in the end of every day I felt I want to sleep so hard because I was so tired. But if you would look at me from outside, it looks like I don't do anything.
Right.
But I was exhausted every day. And this day was divided to parts about thinking about new artworks.
Right.
Thinking about women I knew or I want to know. Parts about food, parts about trips all over the world. In the beginning, I also even made some kind of chessboard from food boxes. So that also was I call it the art and craft hour, like in a joke in a way. But I was basically making chessboards. It took me another 2 months to finish it. And then chess was part of the thing. I was playing against myself, usually losing, but
really?
This is like,
who was better?
I mean, he was better.
Yeah.
And the most amazing things that basically were like the self-talks. I was talking to myself a lot,
Right.
Meeting myself over and over. And it was very, very strict regime. It was like, and I was walking a lot. I was making circles because that's the only exercise I can do like physically. My hands, my body, everything was basically, so I had the whole day there was not even 1 minute almost of rest. I'm talking about like early morning until late night, which I don't know the hours, I have no idea, but probably sunrise because of the first muezzin and at least like 2-3 hours after the last one.
But you also had physical exercise for your walking rounds, you said, right? Circles.
Yes, circles, always circles. Very hot. I mean, it was very hot. It's Tripoli, it's very hot. And every day, basically around evening, I feel like my legs are killing me.
Right.
I have to sleep. And my sleep is very sweet. And every morning I wake up, and this day by day by day, I finish to make my chess. I play chess, and then I start to make letters, Hebrew letters, from the carton paper. And I'm starting to place them on the floor. And I'm writing text, but every day 9 letters. So it's very slow. But every operation is very, very slow. I take it back. I put it back. I put it in the corner so nobody will see it.
Very methodical. Yeah.
Yes. I pee in a bottle. I shit once a week on Friday, because then they let me go to shit.
Oh.
No showers. Only when this guy Ibrahim, the black guy, is coming, and he told me take a shower. He sent me to this, like, when the toilet have this pipe, so you can shower. So it's all very, very organized and very strict, super strict.
To yourself?
To myself, yes. Very different from my lifestyle.
Right.
But at the same time, I was always thinking about that the day is basically is like a dream, basically. It's like a bad dream that I'm having. And the night is like kind of a reality. So because I can sleep everywhere. And it's the same thing. So this is sleeping is my reality, is my days, and the days are my nights, basically. So I was convincing myself about this opposite, because in the beginning of the dreams, I remember I met my family. So it was, so I had this kind of like very tight frame of life inside, and I knew I could survive it for years on years on years, if one day something will happen. And if not, I mean, I just die.
Wow.
But dying was a good option. It was not like a bad option. I mean, it was just finishing, okay, but yeah.
And your conversations with Ibrahim.
Yeah. Very short conversation.
Very short one.
Take a cigarette, thank you, bye.
Really?
Yeah.
So that was your only interaction with another human being the whole time?
He gave me tea once.
Right.
Yeah. And he took me he opened the door for me to take a shower a few times. And he was always come in the morning to do the counting. And I was always telling him I'm still alive. Yeah. And he was always laughing, like repeating what I said like a few times, laughing.
Really?
Yeah.
So that was your exchange every day. I'm still alive, and he would laugh.
Every 4 days when he came, yeah.
Wow.
I used to wait for him, actually.
And you'd prepare for him, as you said.
Yeah, prepare for him.
To make him laugh.
Yes. To make jokes, yes.
Wow. So let's I'm going to ask you more questions about realizations or epiphanies you had while you were there afterwards. I would like you to take us through to the next stage now, when this routine carried all the way through until your escape, basically.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how this, did you have any inkling that an escape was going to happen? Like, when did this happen? And how did it happen?
So I was playing chess. I was in my routine. I mean, nobody could. I was in my routine, in my zone, and then a guard came to, which was very weird, and I was like taking away everything. So I didn't want him to see that. Didn't want him to take it. But he didn't care. He said, "Listen, you have an interrogation by a mudir, but there's somebody very important. We need to shave you." I was like, probably, I don't know, probably hair, and I don't know. It goes very fast. And I said, okay, and my heart was beating a bit, because, I mean, it was it was disturbing my chess game. It was disturbing my day. It was disturbing everything. I don't know what it is, and why this guy want to interrogate me on what? I mean, maybe they're gonna release me, but probably not. And then they took me to the kitchen where they get the food boxes from the army, where there was the electric point, the only one, basically. And they had the machine, so they took away the fridge one. Remember, I was sitting on a cement brick, and he started to try to shave me, but it was very bad. So I told him, please let me do that. And I did it a bit, like normal. And then I went back to the room, told me, wait in your room, and then we're going to take you. It was around noon. I came back to the chess game because I didn't finish what I need to do.
Right.
I finished chess game. I had some walks, and then like I ignore everything happened now, like it never happened. And then 2 hours later, one of the guards came again, come with me. And I said, yeah, I said, okay. So I took the chess actually, and I rolled it in my t-shirts because I was afraid maybe they were going to move me another prison. Maybe something going to happen. And I don't want to walk another 2-3 months to build chess.
Right.
Other things I can do myself. I don't need anything, but chess I need because I really, really need it now. And so then I went to this kind of like outside. They put a sack on my head, handcuffs, and then they put me in a jeep, like on the floor of the jeep. There were 2 soldiers there. They were holding basically my body, so I will not move. And the jeep started to drive, and it drove for I don't know, like an hour. But in this hour, I was praying to have an accident that we go to hospital because I have good plans about how escaping hospital.
Right.
I have like 100 plans about hospital escape, sheets, stuff, and everything was written very well, very, very organized with plan B and stuff.
Right.
But he was driving like crazy, but nothing happened. And I was afraid to go to a different prison because I didn't know what's happening there. Maybe more torture, maybe the room is different. I like the room, I like the size, I like everything. I really was used to that. And then we passed kind of like military base because they're opening the gate, and I was like, shit, we arrived. No accident. I mean, maybe now, maybe with the gate, nothing, okay. And then when I arrived, I heard this kind of like jet, and I heard this kind of like Air Force base. And then the guard told me, you're going to be transferred now, basically. And I was like, where? I don't know. I have no idea. And at some point, they took away the tower, and then I see a jet, private jet in front of me, and a blonde pilot. And I was like, I don't understand what's happening. I think they kidnapped these people, and they're going to execute me, and they're going to show the world how I try to. I didn't understand what's happening, basically. And then the jet is open, the door is opening. This guy, other blonde person, redhead actually, with a suit coming out, introduced himself, and he says in Hebrew, come with me, like to the jet. This guy doesn't speak very well Hebrew, but he knew this word probably. And I just follow him because I don't know, I mean, I don't care. I mean, okay, whatever. I thought everything is staged basically. And they're gonna release video of me trying to leave or something like that. And then I went into the jet, and the jet just flew away. And it took me a few minutes to understand what's happening there. I didn't release anything. I still was in my persona of like a chess game. I need to finish the chess game. I need to finish my circles. And and one of the guys there took a photo. He asked me if he can take a photo for his daughter, and that's actually made me a bit weird. Like if it's like, because I never asked a question for a few months, and I was like, sure. And then I went to toilet for the first time. I saw myself in the mirror. And that's it. I mean, it's and then I started to release everything. Like I said, okay, I think I was saying to myself that I think I did it. I think
you think it's over.
It's over, and I can release basically.
You can release this disciplined that you enforced on yourself to be able to survive this ordeal.
Yeah. And I came out, and I was a better person. I think I was nicer to them.
Out of the bathroom, or
out of the bathroom.
Yes.
So
you're still in the airplane. You're still in the jet.
I was still in the jet.
Okay.
We had Martin Schlaff, this guy who took me out, is the Austrian billionaire. His assistant Thomas was the head of the police of Vienna, and Mahmoud Ibrahim, which is chief of staff of Gaddafi's son, who actually navigated the whole thing, and me and a flight attendant that actually cooked for us dinner. And after a few minutes, Schlaff is giving me like a phone, like a satellite phone, to call my mother, to talk to her. And then I just understand why we didn't do it like before.
Right.
They told me we just left the airspace of Libya. They understood we escaped, basically. We are not doing it legally.
At first, you thought you had been freed, right?
I was freed. And then I had a small of a crisis that I released too early. But at the same time, it was okay because we were out. I remember that really, that I was like, my heart was like, shit. I mean, you are not, I mean, and then I couldn't talk to my mother. We all cried, and that's it. And then we landed in Vienna, and then I went to Jerusalem the day after.
Wow.
And it took me 2 days of non-sleep. And after one long sleep, it was normal again. I started to act normal, I remember.
I mean, normal, as you were before you went to prison?
Yes, yes. It was a bit weird. I mean, everything was weird. Because the idea in prison, when you are out, it was like everything's going to change now because you are in prison. I mean, you are dead, basically, and then you are alive. But the whole idea of training myself when I was in prison, what's going to happen when I'm going to be out, was to train myself to be a normal person and not to talk about prison, even not telling my family about prison. But I was all over the news, so I could not really saying I was not in prison, because I believe that people that being me in prison and talking about it will keep me in prison somehow.
Right.
And but I managed to do this kind of like recalculating what's happening. There was a big press conference in Ben Gurion Airport, and I said nothing.
Yeah.
And I left the press.
I think that's extremely important, because part of your decision in prison was to take ownership of yourself.
Yes, yes.
So part of your ownership was not to let Israel or any other media take your story.
Yeah, and define me.
Right, and define you.
So
they gave this big pressure.
I had a long time to understand everything,
right.
Many things. And then I just came back to life, that normal life and everyday life, and slowly. And people were afraid to talk to me about it because they didn't know what things I have. But weeks after weeks, and again, I mean, life came back, and they are quite normal.
Right.
People don't know who I am really in Israel, which is good.
You mean
in the public sphere, I'm not known as,
because you refuse to speak about it.
Yes, yes.
So all these years later, now you are defined as the artist and not as the person who was in prison.
Yes, yes. Even taxi driver doesn't know I was in prison when they know everything.
That's actually a very good point.
Yes,
wow.
Yes, they don't know. I mean, they remember a kind of story. That's what they say. Oh, there was a story, but it disappeared. They're annoyed that it disappeared.
Right. Even I had this experience when they mentioned that you were going to be coming.
Yeah.
I was interested in the artist, and then when I realized it was the same story I'd read about back then, I was like, oh, it's the same person.
Yeah.
That's really it's fascinating. And you succeeded basically in controlling your narrative.
Yes.
Which is incredible.
Yeah, I feel good about it.
But the next day, I'm sorry, I don't want to go through a painful period, but I realized that you got reunited with your mother, and you arrived with meeting your whole family, but your grandmother, who basically was the grounding force for, in my mind, when we spoke, your Tunisian identity, keeping the language and culture alive, she passed away 2 days before your escape, I think.
Yes, yes. I mean, when I came to the airport, they didn't tell me anything. In the night I was in Vienna, I was chatting with my sisters for the first time, and they were afraid because the Libyans used my email, and they were chatting with everyone, all my friends.
As if they were you?
Yes.
Wow.
To try to understand. So, I mean, they knew I was released, and they asked me again and again, it's real me. But nobody told me about that my grandmother died. And when I arrived to the airport, and I saw my mother, but my father was not there, and I understood immediately that he couldn't come. And I arrived to Jerusalem, to the family house, and my father, his brother, sisters were all on the floor like open shirt, and basically I understood that immediately. And it was a very, very strong moment, because it was a very happy moment for them, because everyone were sure they're going to die. I mean, they are from Djerba. They know exactly what is Tripoli, what is prison there, and they know what is this. And they know even if they were imagining that I would be alive, I will be away. I will not be like in this kind of situation. I will be mentally completely destroyed until the end of my life. In the same time, they see me, and the same time they lost their mother, my grandmother, and it was kind of like happiness with sadness, a mixed, a very weird mix, basically. But I could take it. I mean, they could take everything, because they're already been into this kind of like circle of like sadness and happiness. So, and that's it. I mean, it was. I mean, there were the shiva, there were the talks after that. All the rabbis were, your grandmother went to the sky, and she pulled you out.
Right.
And this is like the narrative now, that because we were close, me and my grandmother. So
No, Rafram, first of all, I thank you for all of us that this is such a difficult period to take us through, especially considering that this is your narrative and you chose to share it with us. So I want to thank you for that.
Sure.
And is it okay with you if we also turn it over to some questions?
Of course, of course.
So yeah, there are a few questions here. Just can you hear me, people? Yes, okay. So a major question is like, how was that escape orchestrated? What did you learn about how it happened? Who were the people behind your release or escape? If you can explain that a little.
I don't know a lot yet. I know many people were involved, including leaders like Sarkozy and Berlusconi and even Putin. But there was the pressure on the son of Gaddafi from the beginning to help me, to release me, basically. He reached out to his father. His father refused. There was a guy called Abdallah Sanusi. He was the head of the secret police, and he was insisting that I'm hiding something. We don't know why, what happened. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's because the president of Tunisia was in Tripoli a week after my prison, because there was the Arab League summit, and he asked my release immediately, because my uncle was close to him, basically. He was the chief rabbi of Tunisia, they were close. And all these things, I don't know exactly what happened, but Saif tried to release me a few times, even orchestrated a boat, Cuban boat. They put the Libyan flag on the boat and they sent it to Gaza as a rescue. And they asked Israel to receive the boat. But Israel refused to receive the boat, and I stayed in prison.
Oh.
It was 3 months after, when I was still playing chess or something. And then one day before basically Ramadan starts, and I was supposed to be accused of espionage to Italy, and for no reason. And Saif knew that. Saif knew that there is no really chances to release me after the trial. And he was in a party with, he was invited to a birthday party of this guy, the Jewish billionaire in Sardinia. And he talked to him. He told him, we need to release this guy somehow. And he told him, I can be the driver, but you need to bring him to my jet, basically, somehow. And that's what happened, basically. He summoned interrogation. I mean, the prison guards didn't know anything. They knew there is a sporting person, which is like number 2 in Libya, asking for interrogation. The guy facilitated was the guy was in the jet. It was the chief of staff of Gaddafi that is wanted now by Libya. And they had guns on the jet in case the prison guards will reject. But it was a low chance that will happen because everyone were confused completely. And then that's it. I was in the jet. So, I mean, that's what I know.
Thank you. I'm just going to see if there are also questions from the crowd. And yeah.
Very lively crowd here, everybody. So if you have your questions, you came here. How did this affect your art? How did this experience affect your art? How is it different from before?
I think it's the same. It's better because I grew up. I mean, always your first works are not accurate, are not. I mean, the way I will just talk about it. I mean, I think everyone can make art. Just need to train this kind of freedom sense in your head. And when you train it and you do it over and over, it's becoming better, more crystallized, more accurate, more you. And I was lucky to have really inner conversation with myself, but but I think I was maybe trying to convince myself that I'm the same person.
And you ordered Libyan food.
One moment, Ari. Let's just take another question.
Yeah.
So your psychological state when you were in prison, do you think, I'm really curious to know, was there something in the way you grew up that made you able to handle this experience the way you did, or do you think it was just something about who you are?
I mean, I had a very good, I grew up very well with family. I mean, my parents loved me, even though they don't know what I do. They have no idea what I do until today, but they love me like endlessly. And I think that's a very good foundation. I mean, not by speaking it, but just showing it, basically, physically. And that's a good foundation, I think, to every human being. I mean, to have this kind of like, that you know that you're loved, basically. And that was also before prison. I was very optimistic. And I think the way of optimism is very, I mean, what is optimism? Optimism is like assuming that everything is going to be okay. But there is a higher level of optimism, is like understanding that it's okay anyway, even if it's bad. Because bad is something very relative. And you can be a kid in this India and without food, without anything, and can be happy. And you can be a kid in London for a very rich family and you can be sad. It's this perspective that we refuse to accept all the time because we are used to our comfort zone. And I'm very, very spoiled person. I really like good bed. I love good food. I love to travel. I love, and at the same time, I said to myself, I have to get to understand that the other life, everything else is the same, have the same value. And this is something that it took time to convince myself, to understand it, to that this is it, basically. And because it's really inside the head, it's nothing else. And this is a very powerful thing to understand when you understand it, that you don't need anything. You don't, even the prison is not prison really, because people outside can work inside prison. And you can be inside without prison. And because it's your head that dictates every single aspect of your life, your wealth, your richness, your everything. And I had this privilege of time to think about it to the end, basically. And like nobody was basically crying next to me. I had not to read anything. I had not to write anything. It was completely not, it was really touching myself very, very, very intimately also, like that almost never happening. Well, usually like in my life, it doesn't happen to me.
So we'll take one more question from the crowd and then from the room. I have a question here of what happened to all the photos and videos that you took before you were arrested?
So there was a civil war after. So one of always was destroyed, or it's still laying there in some kind of like office. That's going to be for the film.
Thank you. And now from the room.
And so during any of this time, did you have any appeals, prayers, to a greater power? Is there any spiritual nature of this at all? Did you feel you were only drawing upon your own resources?
I was reading Psalms, like Tehillim, all the time. The things I remembered. Also I wanted to connect to my father on that, basically. My father reads a lot every day, a book of Psalms, Tehillim. And I was imagining that he's reading as now. He's now reading it in his house and crying. And I connected to him with that, basically. I have always talked with God about who I am and what I do. And I always okay with what I am. I mean, I think that God kind of likes me if He cares about me. And I was reading it every day. I mean, it was not because of God; it was because of my father mostly. That I wanted to connect to him somehow. Like in this, like we maybe reading the same word in the same time, and because parents for me is very sensitive part. I mean, every time I thought about him, I started to cry. Not about myself, only about them. So it was important for me to always to find a connection, basically. And I remember since childhood, like lots of, like around 20-25 chapters. So it was quite a lot. And I divided them during the day. I had this thing to divide them and repeat them and again and again and again and again.
There's, yes, one more question from the room.
Just on the topic of everything, I bring an article about you and Libyan food, and that one of the things you did was recreate food.
Yeah.
You talk about Libyan food and what you did with that and what you ate.
It's a prison food. It's not really Libyan food. Yeah. I did, like when I did a book, I wrote a book about it. and I recreated some of the food basically that was in prison basically, yeah. But not as a luxurious thing, but as part of the book basically, yeah.
Another question I have here was, when you traveled to Libya, did you have some kind of system that if your family didn't hear from you for a while, they'd know something is wrong and they'd called Gaddafi's son? Like, was there any system in place?
No, there was no system because I didn't thought it's going to be like that. I was naive, of course. I didn't thought that. I thought that if I'm going to be arrested, I will make a phone call, like they do in movies, you know, like your lawyer or something, and then it's going to be okay because as I don't kill anyone, I don't think I would be in such a big trouble.
So we're almost at the end. I have one more question here to ask, and that's like, when did you write the book about this experience and why? And also, when is it coming out in English? Because at this point, it's only in Hebrew.
Okay, so the book was written quite recent. So when I left prison, I wrote many notes on a paper, like names, dates, all kinds of insights, very fast. And I didn't know if to write about it or not. And then a few friends told me, maybe you write about it, but try to do it now, so you have fresh memory. Another friend, he had a restaurant in Jaffa, and he invited me to eat there every day and write on the bar. And I did it for 2 months. Basically, I was with a laptop 2 months, and I was basically writing it for 2 months. I had a contact with Am Oved publishing house. It's one of the oldest in Israel. I met this writer called David Grossman. We have a common friend. And he made a phone call and told them, my friend is coming to you, please accept his writing. It was very fast. I went to Tel Aviv, we signed a contract, they published the book. It was 2000, I was in Outport, I was 2012. It was beginning, I think January 2012. So it was like basically a year and 2 months after prison. It was already like published. Recently, I got a call from a friend in a publishing house in Barcelona, but they're going to translate to English after 12 years almost. So it's going to be out in English in the end of the year. That's yeah, but that's surprising because it was buried in a way. But
so we're almost on time. We're almost done, but David, I want to kind of give it to you to ask if you have kind of a final question for us to wrap up with.
I do have a final comment that I want you to make, actually, because I think it also in a way responds to what you asked earlier, which is, you said to me that there was a freedom in terms of being in prison, in terms of your thought and this idea that you have this type of isolation forces a type of creativity of thinking that otherwise is difficult to force yourself in real life to attain. Yeah. Can you describe the way you described it to me? Because I think that's an incredible closing statement.
It's a weird thing to say because you cannot really build it as a person, even if you're the richest man in the world. You cannot build a cube that you are there and you don't know where you're going to live, where you're going to, in a year or 2 or 5 years. It's very hard to build it, but it took me time to understand it, of course, but there is something amazing to be completely alone, without any sense of time, any sense of space, any sense of anything, and to have these conversations. I mean, these things I didn't know before prison. I didn't know it existed, this quality of connection between you and yourself. And slowly, when I understood how can I rebuild myself, and I understood how powerful is this, the power I have inside me to do that, I was happy about these meetings, about these everyday meetings. That's why I was very fanatic almost about my order. In the last day, I remember I was behaving very weird. I mean, if you would look from outside, I mean, this is like I'm escaping from prison, and I'm still like very strict, because I was afraid to lose all this structure and that also like was amazing, because I didn't want to release it for nothing, only if I'm really out. And because it was very, very valuable. It was very, very precious, everything. And I cannot do that now. Impossible for me to do that. I'm too much in my phone. I'm too much depend on what people think. I'm like normal, like everyone.
Right.
And you need a lot of power. You need a lot of like discipline, and to be in a very weird place maybe to do that again. But
I found that really. I wanted to use this as a closing statement because I found that in many ways you're giving up your comfortable life in many ways in Djerba and going to another place is trying to reclaim the sense of communion with yourself. And you gave me a challenge when you said it's impossible to do artificially. And I said to myself, I want to do this artificially. I think it's incredibly powerful, this thing you've created, and that you realize there's a sense of loss about it. And I took that as a very profound statement and almost as a challenge. And this whole conversation with you and getting to know you and this opportunity you've given to all of us here is just is invaluable. And I just want to thank you for being here with us and giving us this opportunity to go through your experiences and your takeaways as well.
Thanks.
Thanks.
So thank you, David. Thank you, Rafram. There are comments coming in the chat thanking you both. For those of you here and online tomorrow, I'll be interviewing Rafram, and it will be an opportunity to hear about his last 7 years in Tunisia, about his art and creativity, learning about that amazing community and what he's doing in relation to it. So you're welcome to join us tomorrow, 3:30 p.m. Pacific. Lovely to have you here. Lovely to have all of you here. And thank you very much, David and Rafram. Toda rabba.
Thank you.
Oh, you said you were going to get emotional. I thought I was going to get emotional.
Sometimes I get emotional. Sometimes
that was hard for me. It was so beautiful. You're saying some of the things.
Yeah, I think I got emotional on the way.